Hello, Internet! Shalthis here, and it's time for another episode of the Engram on gkick.net, on iTunes, and of course, right here on YouTube. So, it is weekly update time. We are one day away from the weekly update. And a few bits of information have come out as far as this weekly update goes. One of which is the reveal on the expansion exclusive Sparrow, which was just made available to players who own the expansion pass either in and of itself or as part of a deluxe edition of Destiny. And this was the EV-30 Tumbler Sparrow. And basically, not only is it a very dynamic looking sparrow with dark blue and orange flames all over it, so a very interesting look. And if you remember, images of this type of sparrow started to leak out during the Halloween update, and some people thought that it was going to be part of that, but it turns out it was just part of this promotion. So some of the other perks of this is that the Tumbler Sparrow, or EV-30, is a freestyle stunt sparrow, as it were. And I've included the video at the end of this video, the Moment of Zen, for this week, or this episode, is actually going to be the official Tumbler Sparrow trailer. So you can see what this sparrow can do in action if you're watching on YouTube. Let me say right off the bat, this episode on YouTube is probably going to be better than the podcast by itself, because some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is actually going to have little graphical representation, stuff that I'm going to put up on that side of the screen. So just be forewarned. Another thing I did want to say, well, let me wrap up with this. So, as far as the sparrow goes, yeah, it's basically a trick sparrow. You're going to be able to do stunts and flips and tricks and everything on it. And that was kind of the point behind it, just a fun change of pace to things. I'm interested. When I get my expansion pass all sorted out, I'm sure I will be getting that sparrow. Again, you will get this through one of several options. And those options are if you have the Ghost, Limited, or Digital Guardian editions of Destiny, if you purchase the expansion pass, or if you purchase the expansion The Dark Below by itself. Now, if you got just the expansion by itself, you won't get the Sparrow until the expansion launches on December 9th. So if you have any of the other options, then you should be able to get it right away. Alright? Now, before I get into the next bit of news on this update, I did also want to say, production here on the Engram is going to be changing a little bit in the future. Probably within the next couple weeks. At least that's the goal. For one, the setup that we have for the YouTube video, where it's just sort of me in the corner here, and you've got, the picture of the Cryptarch on the side there, has worked for a few episodes, but I want to try and change things up. So what I mean by that is I'm going to be changing to a bit of a green screen format and a different backdrop and everything like that, which I'll be using going forward, and we'll see that when I finally get it all worked out. But for now, this is what we're stuck with. As you can see, I'm no longer in the basement. I'm upstairs now. It's starting to get cold in this area of the country, so moving upstairs. But anyway, with that being said, let us move right along. So the next thing on this list was a bit of a clarification regarding the damage output in Iron Banner. Now, as we've said, the difference in level means a lot more now. And I'm going to put up on this side of the screen here the damage output curve. And this was something that was posted in the weekly update. So I want you to take a look at that. And this shows you how damage that's dealt from different guardians of different levels is differentiated. So basically, if you're at the same level, you will deal 100% of the damage that you output. So that's the damage multiplier, 1.0, which means you're dealing exactly what you should be. Now, as you gain in level, as that difference increases, the amount of damage you deal gets less and less. All the way down to what looks like about 0.1, give or take. It's a little hard to tell based off that graph, but about 0.1 damage, so about 10% of the damage you would normally deal, is what you would deal to somebody who's 10 levels different from you. So the closer that level difference gets, the higher damage that you'll deal closer to your actual target amount. And I believe within 3 levels or so, it's barely perceptible. But then as you get further from that, you can see from the curve, it starts to go down. So that's a nice little visual representation of how this damage scale works, and how much damage you will deal and take when you play Iron Banner, and what it means when you're dealing with level 30 or so players, and what level you should probably be going into it. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you're not level 25 at least, then you should probably avoid Iron Banner, because after that point it really starts to dip off pretty severely. But I would say around level 25, you still deal a pretty decent amount of damage there. Probably only losing about 10 or 20%, which is not, that's still a big difference, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're dealing 80% of your normal damage, it's still enough to kill somebody. So I think that'll work out. But that's just a really interesting little bit of information that's been revealed. Next thing on the weekly update was some talk from the latest weekly update, or latest update itself, update 1.0.3, where not only was a lot of information downloaded as far as new content in preparation for the expansion, but it also impacted a lot of the exotic weapons. Some of these were deliberate, some were not. For example, one of the issues was Thorn. Thorn apparently got some significant damage nerfs that were not intentional. So Thorn will be restored back to its former glory, and then some. So apparently it's going to be turned up a bit. I think that's the intent behind a lot of these upcoming updates, is they want exotic weapons to feel more powerful. Whether it's the perks that they get, or the actual damage output in general, they want exotic weapons to be exotic. They want them to be the most powerful weapons in the game, because they clearly should be. So, at least until they decide to release a new level or a new tier of damage. So, for now, yeah. That's one thing we just gotta worry about, is some of them are a little bit over. Now, another one is that last word. Now, a lot of people were saying that the last word had suffered significantly due to damage output. But with investigation, the Bungie determined that that was not the case. It still is pretty much where they want it to be. It might be toned up a bit along with the other exotics, but it's fine. And in their words, you still have to aim that thing. So, aim your weapons. Alright, so with all that being said, the next piece of information comes down to some specifics on strikes. Now, strikes are, for those of you who may be unfamiliar for one reason or another, are the middle ground between solo content and 6-man raid content. They are the 3-man dungeon-like content that is sort of match-made stuff. It doesn't have to be match-made. You can go in with a pre-made group, of course. But one of the big differences, or one of the big problems with the 3-man strike, is that there was unintentional damage scaling occurring when you had 3 players. So the larger your fire team, the more damage an enemy was dealing. So a few changes had been made to strikes. Damage had been toned down so that it would be a little easier overall, so that there'd be a higher survival rate in 3-player fire teams. And also the damage was normalized across all group sizes, so that you wouldn't feel like if you had more than more than 1 or 2 people in your fire team that you were, kneecapping yourself to try and complete the strike. So now players that join your strike is good. You're going to want more people in there. So the side effect of that is playing strikes by yourself is now much harder. So this is undesirable for a lot of people. A lot of people complained when this change first happened, because some people like to solo the Nightfall strikes and things like that. So they are looking into trying to find some better ways to solve that. But to be perfectly honest with you, I would put that as low priority. I don't know where Bungie puts it, how they decide to put it, but I honestly think that would be low priority. Like, yeah, the other stuff, very high priority, glad they fixed it. But in general, soloing a piece of 3-man content is not the design. The design of it is to have 3 people in there. At least 2, get closer to the 3 than you are to 0. So 1 person should have a hard time. It should be really hard to solo a 3-man piece of content. Maybe it was too hard. I don't know. I've never tried to solo any of these strikes. I enjoy doing the matchmaking. I've always had pretty good luck with that sort of stuff. Maybe I've died quite a bit, but hey, it's still been okay. But either way, that's kind of how the design is being focused on from there. So, with that being said, that's really the details on this weekly update. So, a lot of interesting changes, a lot of good information. That cool little damage curve, great new Sparrow again. So I'm going to let you all get a chance to check out the new Sparrow in action. The official Tumbler Sparrow trailer is going to come right after the end of this episode for those of you on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for watching. I will see you all next time. Happy hunting, Guardians. So long.